Look, in tech circles, Cal Henderson is something of a legend. He was one of the founders of the photo sharing app Flickr that was sold to Yahoo. Then he moved his attention to a program that allows teams of workers to communicate and to share projects and tasks. Now, that business, of which he's the co-creator and chief technology officer, is called Slack. Astonishingly, Salesforce bought Slack back in 2020 for $27.7 billion US. I recently caught up with Cal Henderson and spoke to him about the trend of working from home that justified that massive sale price.
I think it was a really interesting turning point or really an acceleration point. I think what we saw happen with COVID and everybody having to work from home overnight really accelerated changes in the workplace that were already happening, already driving towards kind of more flexibility and a different relationship to work. If COVID had happened a decade or 15 years before, I think the outcomes would have been very different. But I think we were already poised to see a lot of changes in how people worked anyway. As there is always a new generation entering the workplace, there's always this change in people's relationship to work. If you look at how people relate to their jobs and their employers now versus 20 years ago or 40 years ago, it's really significantly different. Some of that is technology change and the actual activities we do at work, and a lot of it is kind of more societal and people's kind of relationship to work as well.
But isn't it astonishing? You even think about that COVID period. Had we not had high-speed broadband, had we not had programs such as yours, Slack, to allow communications between teams, had we not had Zoom meetings and other types of technology, there would have been wholesale unemployment. Right now, we've got super-duper full employment in the United States, in Australia and other parts of the world, and that's the fundamental economic outcome of having these types of tools.
Absolutely. I think it would have been a very different and much worse outcome if this had happened before we had these kinds of tools. Now, if you'd have asked me or most business leaders a week before it happened, will you be capable of moving your whole entire organization to working from home over a weekend? Everybody would have said no, that it's not possible, that we couldn't possibly be productive. But it turns out we were wrong. It was possible to do that kind of change basically overnight. And companies not just continued, but in many kinds of knowledge worker companies, they really thrived during that period. And I think if that period of working from home had just been a couple of weeks or maybe even a couple of months, then it's possible we would have snapped back to how we were before and we would have just seen it as an anomaly. But instead, it lasted for so long that it has had an undeniable impact on how people think about what's possible in the workplace. It's not just the employers, who know that it's possible. It's all of the employees too. And as an employee, if you work for an organization, you know not just it's possible to do your job from home, but that was also a period of huge productivity and success for organizations, then why are you going into the office 5 days a week? Why are you spending so much time commuting? And now we're in this kind of post-pandemic period. We do see some organizations on either end of the spectrum. You have organizations that have brought everybody back to the office every day, 5 days a week. We're kind of back to how it was 5 years ago. On the other end of the spectrum, you have some organizations who have said, we don't need an office anymore. Everybody can work from home. We know that it's possible to work in this kind of way. But the majority of organizations of all kinds of sizes, of information workers worldwide, sit somewhere in the middle. There's some form of hybrid. People might be in the office almost every day, but they have some flexibility, or they might be in the office almost never. But the office is still a tool for people to be able to get together. Even a fully distributed organization is not the same as saying we'll never get together in person. I think that's important too. I think back when, before the pandemic, it was the default for people to be in an office every day. That was just the assumption that that's what needed to happen for people to get work done and be productive. I think what's changed now is that we can look at each kind of activity, each kind of thing that somebody does as part of their job, and understand what is best done in person and what can be done at home, and in fact, what is best done at home, and what are the activities that need to bring people together, and what are the activities that need a lot of focus. And I think that's just a conversation we couldn't have before the pandemic.
OK, but there's also structural change that comes. There's obviously software programs such as yours with all the various apps that allow the instant communication and the sharing of information using technology. But then there's another structural change, even to the price of office blocks in San Francisco or Sydney or wherever it might be. they've fundamentally had to change as a result of this change of behaviour in corporations and individuals.
Absolutely, but also that's the only thing that changes, the layout and the use of cities over time anyway, is what people do, and especially what they do at work, and work and the structure around it has shaped our cities, for the last 100 years. And I think this, while this is a more of an abrupt change that we would have otherwise have seen, I think it is really an acceleration of what was already happening. Now, obviously, when a fast acceleration happens like this, just kind of overnight, it has a huge impact on commercial real estate. What is a downtown of a city for anymore? And I think those questions are things that are going to take months and years to answer as we come to grips with it. As cities see less people coming in every day, what does that mean? But also, what does it mean for the neighbourhoods they live in, where they spend more time every day? And it is going to be a shift in how we think about the role of the role of the office and the role of the home. But I think this kind of change is inevitable. It's just been an acceleration of what was already coming.
But you personally have been involved in some startups such as Flickr along the way. But then as you came into this business, to have actually got $1 billion in startup capital, you kind of get that. But to then see this enormous change in the workplace, to see this business valued by Salesforce at $27.7 billion just a couple of years ago, that says something about the change in work practices and those who create the tools that help to implement it.
Yes, I think, as work has changed for information workers over the last decade, it has generally become more complicated, that more work is highly collaborative, that involves teams of people working together. And the hardest challenge for many kinds of organizations, regardless of what it is they do, is that collaboration. Getting people aligned, getting them working together towards a goal is a really difficult thing. And tools that help align teams and drive them forward, whatever it is they do, tools like Slack, play an increasingly important role in the modern world of work.
I'll tell you what, it is great to have a chat to you, the CTO and founder of Slack, Cal Henderson. Many thanks for your time here on the program today.